Ready whenever you are.
Recording in progress.
Welcome, everyone. This is the session on what we call the EcoInternet project that DotAsia works on. But this particular session, we will be looking at exploring some of the narratives and also narratives about the eco-friendliness of the internet, and also the policy interventions for addressing such issues. We're very excited. Actually, can we go back to the slide, the speaker slide first? Sorry. So we're very excited to have Audrey Tang with us, who's the digital minister of Taiwan, and we're probably looking for Audrey to talk a little bit about the measures in Taiwan and perhaps her views about addressing sustainability and the environmental impact of the internet, and the information technology, and how policy interventions might address these issues. And then we have Jaewon. Actually, I have to apologize. Kavikuma, unfortunately, is unable to join us today, so we won't have our representative from Microsoft join us, but maybe hopefully next time we'll have someone join us. But we'll also have Jaewon, who's a young academic who's studying the sustainable systems and information technology, which will share with us some of her thoughts, I guess, both on the youth perspective as well as on the academia perspective of addressing sustainability of internet and IT systems. So, and then I will be presenting, providing a little bit of an update on the work that DotAsia is doing on the EcoInternet Index, especially last year and this year's work. And then we'll have Ellen from InternetNZ join us to be a respondent on some of the topics. Hope to keep this a fairly open and dynamic discussion, so feel free to come to the mic. In fact, at any time. We've only got 3 of us speaking, and Ellen being the first respondent, but feel free to come to the mic and add your thoughts. So with that, actually, I'll like to turn to Audrey. Like to turn to Audrey first, and to get us started, actually, from perhaps the government perspective and from Taiwan, what the challenges may be in terms of sustainability and the eco-friendliness of the internet infrastructure, and how policy interventions may be useful or not useful for addressing these type of issues. So over to you, Audrey, for the first remarks.
Sure, and thank you. I'm really honored to be here, and I'll just share a few short remarks and looking forward to more Q&A. In Taiwan, of course, we're committed to net zero emissions by 2050, like many international partners, and our ICT industry have committed on that too. I think some of the operators, like Taiwan Mobile, have committed to net zero by 2040, and so many of them are doing a lot to counter the carbon and other greenhouse emissions. But we also understand, because in Taiwan structurally, most of us are small and medium enterprises. So in addition to reducing the energy use, energy efficiency on the internet backbones itself, for example, switching to VoLTE from the more traditional voice communication was hailed as having the capability of saving, I believe, around 100 million kilowatt hour per year. And that was a big push a couple years back to get everybody switched to more energy efficient spectrum use and so on. But I think back in 2015, Ericsson has a report that says while the ICT industry have steadily consumed around, I think it was 1.4% or so of energy use, the enablement, the possibility of using digital transformation technologies to help other sectors to make the carbon indexing, the verification process, footprint verification process more efficient and so on, has the potential to contribute to around 15% of total reduction in other industries. So a lot of our work in the Ministry of Digital Affairs, in particular the Administration for Digital Industries, the ADI, is to introduce such greenhouse awareness tools, verification tools, and so on, through the existing platforms that we use for digital transformation. During the pandemic, although Taiwan didn't have a single day of lockdown, we nevertheless see a lot more people preferring touch-based payments, not cash payments, and so on. So we already have an existing stimulus package with the T-Cloud, TaiwanCloud.gov platform that enable the MISMEs, the small and medium enterprises, to have their POS systems, CRM systems, and so on, with a lot of government subsidies, actually up to 50% when they want to try out a cloud-based platform. So now, post-pandemic, or at least postponed pandemic, we now use exactly the same platform to work with vendors that can help reduce greenhouse emissions, to do footprint verification and energy use and so on, to make sure that these providers have the audience of all the MISMEs that was interested in the T-Cloud digital transformation effect, so that they can partner with these new solution providers very quickly. So I do believe that internet is a great platform to offer the awareness of such solutions, often cheaper than the MISME operators think. And also we organize yearly hackathons, like this t-shirt is Presidential Hackathon, where people, even if they're not in the private sector, not startups, but just people with new ideas of how to do carbon emission reduction, can band together, propose their ideas, and 5 teams each year receive this trophy from our president, Dr. Jaewon, that guarantees the personnel, budgetary, and regulatory support for their ideas. For example, a couple of years back, there was an idea to make an app to show the nearby water refilling stations and quantify the carbon footprint reduction that people save by refilling their bottles instead of buying new bottles of water or other soft drink. But because this is quantified and gets everybody in the habit of quantifying their carbon emission reductions, this soon connects to many cultural spots, points of interest, and so on, which all not only offer the water refill, but also offer their ESG themed products and services, so that people who go to there to refill, the name is Fengcha or Circuit Plus, can actually learn about new ways to change their daily behavior to be more ecosystem and ecology friendly. So again, this is internet as an awareness providing tool. So that would be my initial remark, and I look forward to the Q&As.
Very interesting. Actually, I guess you're highlighting the awareness aspect of especially the internet and environment. But I guess my just a quick question, and if there are any clarifications, please. I'm at the end of every intervention would like to open for 1 or 2 clarification questions. So please come in. But I guess besides an awareness, do you see any like incentive programs or on the reverse, are those useful for the industry as well? You mentioned about the infrastructure itself and utilizing the VOLTE has benefits. Would putting in place like incentive programs from the government be useful?
Yeah, from the energy efficiency point of view, this is quite useful. Because in Taiwan, people know that this year and the coming year and so on, energy efficiency and the resilience of the grid, these are very high on our priority. So almost as a consequence of energy efficiency, we get the carbon emission reductions by working on the energy efficiency part, because reliable providers of telecommunication services, other services in light of the ever increasing electric demands because of our GDP growth during the pandemic. That is on everybody's mind. So our incentive is mostly on the use of energy storage, of more efficient use of the local grid and things like that, which also translate, of course, to GHG savings.
Thank you. Any questions for Audrey before we move on, please? The mic is missing, sorry. My apologies.
Right, going wireless.
Hello, my name is
Hey.
Chan. I'm from APC. Hello, Audrey. My question is, does impact assessments of industries work when it comes to standards for companies, in your experience from government perspective? That's one of the things we're looking at in terms of, taking industry into account, and especially internet-related industries. Thanks.
Yeah, so just to check I get a question correct, do you mean something like the Global Reporting Initiative, the impact assessments, and so on across the public listed and or other industries? Are you referring to something like that?
Yes, I mean, I think what I would like to hear about is that in your experience, for example, in Taiwan, do you ask for impact assessments from companies, and do they work?
Yeah, so for large publicly listed companies, this is now mandatory. The Financial Supervisory Committee has been very clear about communicating that this is not just good CSR practice, but mandatory because they're large and public listed, they have this social responsibility. But as I mentioned, in Taiwan, most of the providers are MISMEs. And for the MISMEs, they do not yet, at this time, have a very reliable way to get into the GRI compatible impact assessment in a way that doesn't hurt their bottom line so much, right? So which is why, as I mentioned, partnering through the T-Cloud initiative and so on, we partnered them with the solution providers that can automate away many of the chores that they need to do such impact assessments and share the success cases. We also have another program called the T Transformation Ambassador, where we pair about 5 or 10 freshly graduated undergrads who are digital natives and with experts of digital transformation, including the impact assessment, and bring them into the existing more traditional MISME clusters, so that the young people, they're not interns, they're ambassadors. And the younger people, they do care more about sustainability, about social and environmental responsibility. So they work with a lot of intention, and they can introduce such new tools and get the MISMEs, although they do not by law have to file such impact assessments, they nevertheless are encouraged because they will build more brand awareness and relationship with the young people who are very intentional in their consumption patterns, right? So I think this is a larger demonstration of the young people's agenda setting roles in Taiwan. In Taiwan, we have people younger than 18 very successfully setting public policy agendas through the internet, petitioning to ban plastic straws from our national drink, bubble tea takeouts, and many more, right? So because they command such intergenerational solidarity, many people in their 70s and 80s joined the campaign started by people in 16 or 17. They band together and have this power in selective consumption. And so when they working through the T-Cloud or Transformation Ambassador Program to get the MISMEs to do voluntary impact assessment reporting, the MISMEs know that if they do that, it's not just for compliance, but it's winning over hearts and minds of a younger generation.
Thank you, Audrey. That's very interesting, and I guess the youth engagement and youth ambassador part is a perfect segue into our next speaker, Jaewon. Over to you.
Hello, I'm Jaewon from Korea, and I'm doing a PhD in geography, but also has been active in internet governance. And I think the sustainability and environment has been still quite a new topic in internet governance. As you can see in APrIGF, we only have this session for sustainability, and in IGF, I think it was from 2019 only that they have to have the sustainability. So I'm really glad that you are organizing this session today. And while it is true that everyone knows that a lot of CO2 emission is coming out from internet, but I think we also have to acknowledge that how much it also saves us from having another environmental pollution. For example, by having people attending it by online, we might have actually prevented more CO2 emission of like not taking a flight and everything than actual internet usage of having all the CO2. So for me, I was been always interested in having a not only about the trade-off, but also a synergy so that we can see the whole picture of it. So for example, we should also think about how do we use this internet and technology in terms of improving environment. For example, in the city that I'm based in Karlsruhe, we are making a digitalized tree map so that using the GitHub, people can actually go into the website and see where are the exact tree located and what are the benefits from the trees are given to the society. Because not everyone will aware of what are the benefits from the trees, and if they do not know what is the tree in front of their tree, they might not think of it as like important. And if they cut the trees, then we also lose the opportunity to capture the carbon dioxide coming out from internet. So also I was been trying to having a project on digitalization of urban trees, so that we are planning to have all the QR code in each tree, and people can go to the QR code and just see what are the actual benefit coming out from the CO2. Like for example, how much carbon is being reduced and how much water is being captured and everything. Because I think even though like we always think to talk about the negative about the internet, but this is the platform that we can actually also acknowledge all the things that we can do with the environment. Because yeah, like talking about the negative side is also important, but we cannot live without it at this point. So I think it is the time that we get to talk with the interdisciplinary sectors and actually talk what we can do about it. In my department, even though we are really into environment and all that, I think also in the department itself, is this still a new topic that we talk about the internet or digitalization. So initially, when I was also saying that we should use like this QR code or internet for the environment, they were also kind of suspicious that what like is so random, and that's what they were thinking initially. So I think for the youth is that I'm glad to see many youth are now getting more aware of the fact that it is all connected and we should do something about it. But at the same time, the others and people up there should also acknowledge that this is also a good idea, not just simply just use thinking that we should do this and that without thinking. So as a author and as a person who are the people who might have like more power in terms of having all this faculty and all this environment, I think our role is to making a space that youth can actually having a creative idea about what we can do with the technology and environment to save the environment thing.
That's very interesting, and of course you are working on one of them, and the trees. That's very, very interesting. But one thing that I want to add on, maybe ask you is, you mentioned that we cannot use. I mean, we are always using the internet. It's maybe like to save the environment doesn't mean that we write shorter emails or watch less video, but so how do we perhaps what can users do in your mind, and what can young people do?
Yeah, I think like just the simple thing that even about like email, while there's a lot of CO2 coming out from email, I think not many use or other actually acknowledge about how much impact it can bring. and just like simple unsubscription about like emailing lists that you always just delete and never look at it. If you just unsubscribe from just this emailing list, even save a lot of CO2 emission that we are talking about. And I think the organizer and all the participants should be also responsible in terms of all the environmental things. For example, we are talking about environment here, and I think there's a lot of air conditioner coming out from this room where we have to wear a lot of jacket. If we actually reduce all the air conditioner, maybe we have already saved a lot of like, you know, all these things. So yeah.
That's very, very interesting thought. Any questions for Jaewon? Please. There's the mic. Can we just have one mic there?
Okay, right. Thank you. Kenny Huang, Executive Council Member of APrIGF. Just a simple question, because we are internet governance community. More specific is technical internet governance community. For example, like APrIGF, we are in charge of IP address allocation and policy. And I can in charge of a new GTLD and domain management. And regarding to the specific issue, actually that's across different regions, different domains. And what can internet governance community do to facilitate that kind of situation, to improve the situation better? Any recommendation in terms of policy, in terms of technical implementation? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really glad that you have asked this question. And I think like at the Youth Internet Governance Forum or at this Internet Governance Forum, we always talk about digital native, digital citizenship, and so on. And I think this should be also including about the education of like the linkage between environment and internet, and also how to be like responsible in terms of using the internet, not only about like the regulations and like be moral and so on, but we should also teach about this impact of internet to the environment, because like maybe even at the APrIGF, maybe we can more talk about like the link of environment and internet, so that in the end, when they become like someone who can be responsible for such a thing, then maybe at that point, many people will be already acknowledge about the point and see to try to have a change. Because at this APrIGF and or APSIG and all these things, even though some people might already know about it, I think inside the program, not many people are already like teaching about such a thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess I can add quickly. I will go into a little bit of a presentation after this, and I note question, but can I come back to you, or you really want to jump in first? Please go. I like the discussion more. You don't have to listen to me present.
No, it was not that. It was because Jaewon's presentation was very focused on one of the ideas that I wanted to talk about. Can you hear me? Is it better? Okay.
Yeah.
Great explanation, great awareness. I wanted to quickly add on. So I'm Shraddha. I'm from India. I'm representing the Youth Special Interest Group. And my question was regarding the project that you spoke about. And the project talked about digitizing the trees, right? So we wanted to ask, how can this project be implemented at the local level by the youth community who are very conscious of their consumption patterns and their emissions? So is there some way we can interpret, and you can expand a little bit more about the project, so we can sort of try to initiate and have a similar discussion at the local levels in our respective communities, please?
Thank you. For now, in my university, it's usually like the working group is there working on it, but I actually saw a news about in India, there was one university that is putting already a QR code on the university and see what's going on. For myself, I was trying in my city itself and try to expand it to whole Germany and maybe Europe in the future. Yeah, but I think it wasn't the first time that people are trying to do so, but I think it's also people should be taking like all the effort and time consuming. So I think it's only when like youth are really willing to do so, because someone cannot just go and say like, please put the QR code. But I think it's an excellent idea that we can implement it together so that we can also share information about it.
We should definitely have an open standard for that to talk of. Did I see another question? And can you get the presentation on? I see my clicker is actually over here, so apologies. was there, you want to after, but I guess it's a good segue into Kenny asked a question, and also these initiatives. One of the things that I wanted to talk about is our work at DotAsia on the EcoInternet Index, and that's actually an attempt or an effort to try to talk about this at a governance level. What we have done is last year we worked together on a pilot, and I'll introduce a little bit, and to really start the discussion, because whether ICANN or registries or registrars can actually do something. I think there's something to that we need to do, but we need to figure out the right narrative to start with, and this is part of the work. So we're very glad that HBS, from Hong Kong, actually HBS is from Germany, but they have a Hong Kong office. Some of the people are in the audience now. Really grateful for their support, and also the support from APrIGF Foundation to actually work on the project that this little tiger here is something that DotAsia started to work on in 2016 when the Sustainable Development Goals were put in place. We started to look into sustainable development related to internet and also related to Asia, which is what DotAsia does, and therefore the little tiger. But what it talks about is also how the internet impacts the environment, and how the internet impacts climate change. So there are certain narratives, right? Netflix being very, kind of dirty, or what kind of energy is actually powering the internet, powering the search engines that you are using, and it adds up. That is quite true. But as Jaewon mentioned, one of the things we realize is that while the internet continues to produce carbon, carbon emission and so on, it's still a relatively small part, and also the narrative needs to be a little bit different, perhaps. What about the benefits that come from the internet, right? So what we did last year was we worked with a number of experts from various areas, from internet governance to environment, to the industry, about hosting providers and data centers and so on. And we tried to look into the right narrative, precisely as what Jaewon mentioned. Whereas, of course, using Zoom, actually, every time I turn on Zoom, my battery gets drained much faster. Yes, it consumes a little bit more energy, but that versus the other side, what it replaces, may be equally important to consider. So how do we, what should be the narratives? The narrative probably shouldn't just be all the CO2 emission that internet increases, because we will know for almost a fact that that number will be increasing, right? Because we continue to use a little bit more. But what that replaces is really a much more important idea. And how do we try to figure out what it replaces? The other important area that we realize is that the power that supports the internet, really the power grid that supports the internet is a defining factor of your jurisdiction's environmental impact of your internet infrastructure. And that also that includes, of course, the regular power grid, but it also includes another interesting aspect, which we realized, which is the backup power supply. Some of you might know, a lot of times the backup supply is still on diesel, for example, right? I mean, versus maybe if the backup supply is on solar power, right? There could be a significant impact on the environment if we think through the infrastructure. So, and finally, a third aspect that we realize is the infrastructure and the usage of the bandwidth and the capacity itself. are we building overcapacitating the bandwidth? Because sustaining a particular bandwidth actually could cost, energy-wise, more than maintaining the capacity might be the bigger contribution for energy consumption than the data that goes through the throughput of the data itself. So these are some of the things that we looked at and realized that something that we need to really think about may be the digital advantage as well, the digital economy, and what advantage and how it balances out. Of course, the internet as it develops creates more carbon footprint, has more carbon emissions, but what does it replace? And that is one of the narratives that we came about and realized that that's the right way to think about it. Doesn't mean we shouldn't do something, but here is a little video that we did about that narrative.
But it is expected to bounce back in so how does the internet recover? What is the carbon footprint of the internet? Any kind of watching videos, playing games, sending emails involves the transfer of data. The internet takes approximately 0.015 kilowatt hour of power. And that is not however, this carbon footprint is so way less than driving to the cinema to watch a movie or sending a letter from the post office to deliver. Nevertheless, we still need to be more carbon conscious about internet. One way to improve the eco-friendliness of the internet
This is one of the narratives. It is an important thing to become more conscious about internet. How do I now can't click to the next slide. Thank you. So one of the things is of course the internet usage, and what we have looked into is also, if you look at when you set up a, sorry, I was distracted a little bit. Let me roll back and say, so when we were looking into how we then measure the climate change impact of internet infrastructure, and we want to be able to compare between jurisdictions like in Hong Kong versus in China versus in Taiwan versus in Korea, Japan, and so on. One thing that we quickly realize is that, obviously a larger country versus Hong Kong or Singapore, it's hard to compare, right? But not only the population, but also the internet population. So one of the things that we looked into is how do we create a kind of index that would be able to compare between different jurisdictions. And this is one of the challenges that we have worked on. And in the last year, we put together a pilot study that looked into multiple areas, multiple factors to create an index that basically of course, it looks into the per user usage and contribution to carbon footprint, and also the usage of energy. So there are three axes really in the pilot study that we did last year. One factor is the digital economy versus the carbon footprint of the internet. Here you have a study basically comparing how much of the old economy, the internet economy or the digital economy is replacing versus the increasing the internet carbon footprint. So on one hand, yes, the internet might be increasing in carbon footprint, but does it replace certain old economy, which is much more carbon heavy. So this is one axis of the study. Another axis of the study is, of course, the power grid itself. And again, this forms a very important part of it. And the renewable energy component of the power grid is another axis of that particular jurisdiction. The third one is kind of interesting and relates a little bit to what Kenny mentioned, and it relates to the more directly to the internet governance ecosystem, and it actually looks at the internet exchange in data, and also the data that is being transferred between countries and the capacity. What it looks at here is to see how much capacity a jurisdiction has and the variance of it. Because if it varies a lot, for example, the peak hours are really high and at night there's really low usage, what that means is that the capacity is built up very big and consuming a lot of energy, but it's not fully utilized, right? If the variance is big, it's less fully utilized, and therefore it's actually less eco-friendly. So this last component is actually interesting. And together, basically, we came up with we looked at 6 jurisdictions around Asia, and the scoring is not the important thing, but although it's kind of interesting to see Japan being a little bit ahead, and Hong Kong being really bad, and so on. But that is not the key issue. What we think we came across is with these 3 axes, what we looked at is it's possible to compare different jurisdictions that may be large or small and look at how the components are really contribute to the eco-friendliness of the internet infrastructure. So I'll kind of, this is the last, oh, there's one more video if I have enough time. This is 2 minutes, if you would allow me, and then I'll end. So this is another video based on those findings.
But in the same number of people travel at different times throughout the day, we only need smaller trains and also less number of trains at the same time to still get everyone to their destination. That way, we have a more efficient system to exchange energy. Same for the internet. When we better utilize the capacity of the network by using or spreading connectivity across multiple hours of internet traffic. For example, data backups, data downloads, mass email, etc. You may think that changing only your habit may not have a big impact, but imagine if all the internet companies and their data and games become more carbon conscious. Together we can make a big difference. The internet has a carbon footprint too. Together we can do more with the internet and waste less by promoting more efficient use of network infrastructure capacity. Don't forget to use more renewable energy sources too. Therefore, go to EcoInternet.asia. Do more, waste less.
So this is really the end, and this year we're looking to expand the study. Last year it was a pilot study for just 6 jurisdictions as a starter. We're looking to expand to about 15 to 20 jurisdictions, and hopefully by the end of the year we'll have some more numbers to show and some ranking. Ranking to start off with is a conversation starter. Let's not make it an absolute who's the better, but over the years, I think if we consistently do this, we can see certain trends that may be useful for the right narrative to talk about this issue. So that's sort of where we are, and I see people lining up. That's great. Please come on ahead.
Hi, Edmon. Chris Buckridge from Ripen CC. Thank you for this. I wasn't aware of this study, and it's really good to know that you're involved in this and working with the APrIGF Foundation as well. I think it's really valuable work. And I'm coming at this very much as a non-expert in this field particularly, but there's been some really interesting commentary I've seen recently from a Dutch researcher named Rudolf van den Berg, who used to be with the OECD. And one of the points that he's been hammering quite hard, and I think he's doing some more formal research on this at the moment, is that the links between energy usage and bandwidth, or energy usage and the amount of packets being pushed through the pipes, is actually quite problematic. And a lot of the governments, but also a lot of the other sort of groups who are talking about this are actually using the wrong metrics or a wrong understanding of those relationships. And I was just wondered if that's something that you had come across, or if you had any reactions or views on that.
First of all, I would love to know what those findings are. What we do find is that essentially it is not really correlated at this time. People don't really think about data traffic patterns. Some larger organizations, I believe Google and some others, do try to look at it, but the larger discussion is a little bit off at this point, as you say. I started the presentation saying a lot of the narrative is like Netflix, how many trees are you killing by watching one Netflix movie, right? I mean, yes, that is nice headline and everything, but does that really help, right? So I kind of agree that the narrative needs to change a little bit and look at the network capacity and network building network itself, how that should be sustainable. So I would be very interested. Please do point me to those studies. And yeah, before I go to Duncan, we have Ellen with us online. That would be our respondent to just give a little bit of a response to I guess my presentation, and also Jaewon's thoughts and Audrey's. So I'll go to Ellen first and then come back to the queue. Ellen.
Thanks, Edmon, and thanks to the other speakers in this panel. I think it's a really important topic for the internet community as a whole to be having a dialogue about. And I think that, you know, this research itself provides a really useful tool and framework for having these multi-stakeholder discussions about the internet and the impact on our planet at a time of, you know, serious importance that we take action around a climate crisis. I guess I wanted to kind of reflect from a New Zealand perspective on the kind of framework and taking it forward. It's really interesting to hear the expansion of the research, and would certainly be interested in looking at some more geographically remote places like New Zealand and the Pacific Islands, which are part of, you know, the DotAsia and Asia Pacific community. Because when I think about the framework you've laid out there, that the benefits of the internet in terms of services, travel, that the traditional old world carbon expenses that you kind of talk about, that the internet can replace, makes it a real benefit. So in this framework, I know also that in New Zealand, a lot of work is going into that energy efficiency. So having a commitment to renewables. For example, we're getting, we have Microsoft, I'm sorry they couldn't join us today, or have new data centers announced last month that have some really great commitments to renewable energy in its basis, and taking steps to build some big data centers here in New Zealand for the first time that will, from kind of planning and implementation, have eco impact and renewable energy at, you know, things like how it's cooled and things done in the least impactful way. And it's really interesting to see that kind of efficiency work that is often what is talked about with the EcoInternet around how do you, you know, reduce the cost or make it more efficient. But I think it is really important using that framework, as you said, not to just say it's fine and look, it has benefits, but then to also look at each of those things. And that's where I really appreciated the two respondents. How do we, you know, increase the benefit of the internet versus, you know, old world ways of doing things? How do we continue to push down that energy cost, make it more renewable, increase that efficiency? So it's a way to think about it. But that then we add on, you know, these reflections on taking action to change and kind of take steps to address the existing infrastructure, but so that new infrastructure, like here in New Zealand with our data centers, has this at the front of mind for governments, for companies, and for users to raise awareness of this issue as we go forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Ellen. I think you raised a few very good points. I wanted to maybe is there further that in internet? I'm sorry, internet in New Zealand that is happening. I guess a lot of the tech companies actually have sort of announced that they will become carbon neutral by a certain time. Is that a trend? But a lot of times when you look into it, they really just buy carbon futures and and not so much in their operations. But I guess the question is that a trend in New Zealand? You also mentioned that there are some activities.
Certainly, yeah. I mean, I can speak to the data centers I talked about. Microsoft was here. I mean, I think there are questions about how it's implemented, but in New Zealand, we've I think moved forward as a country our commitment to being 90% renewable in the next 2 years, and then 100% by 2030. But I know that the planning around these new data centers has included things like the data centers being using air cooling, being water free. Thinking about different ways for sort of 100% carbon free energy from the day they open. As a cornerstone of it. So I think that there are, good practices coming into play with some companies, but it's worth kind of, unpicking those, understanding those, and sharing best practices and the questions amongst the internet community.
Thank you. And Audrey, just to let you know, I am looking at the Zoom room. So if you want to add, or Ellen, if you want to add on any of the questions, please put up your hand and I'll come to you. And Jaewon, you just need to let me know. But Duncan, we're going to have a question.
Yeah,
please keep lining up, and I'll go through the line.
Yeah, Duncan from the APrIGF Foundation. It's just a quick question about the monster in the room in terms of applications that use it, that being crypto, of course. And overwhelmingly far more than NetSuite, streaming movies. And could you think of a tool like this being used to assess potential new applications, technologies, crypto being the example? If we'd seen how much power crypto was going to use in the end, would we have gone ahead, or would we have been able to say, no, you're going to be a monster in terms of power consumption, you need to go away and think again? Or no, that's just too far out there?
I guess it's hard to say, right? I mean, it's almost like we're supposed to build a network with permissionless innovation, and this might not be the right thing, but I think crypto is a very good example. And if we knew about how the network usage and stuff, and how the trends actually come in, maybe we might have changed. I don't know, Audrey or Ellen or Jaewon, you want to add anything?
Sure, I can chime in.
Please.
Okay. Yeah, I think as early as 2010, I said publicly that my consulting fees are $1 Bitcoin per hour. But at that time, the Bitcoin is just around $100 and 200 afterwards. But the companies that work with never paid me Bitcoin. They paid me fiat in US dollars or euros, because their accounting systems back then could not support Bitcoin. But I became aware of the carbon emission challenges of the proof of work around 2016. And I said quite publicly around October 2016 that I burned my private keys and would not use this technology again unless they solved this issue. And so I'm looking at the Ethereum merge countdown, which is 2 days and 18 hours from now, where they promised that they will cut their carbon emission, their electricity use by 99% or more. And I think that in the crypto world, there's already a lot of impact certificate, carbon certificate, tradable carbon market, and so on, innovations going on. And it would be quite oxymoronic if the carbon emission that they do by storing these like non-fungible certificates actually cost more in terms of carbon emissions than the actual savings they track. And so I think although it is permissionless innovation, there is a strong norm in the crypto world to choose possible solutions, possible technologies in the layer 1 Taiwan that are more eco-friendly. And more, I think the younger people, as I mentioned, they drive the norms and are selective in their choice. So yeah, I look forward to the merge, of course, but also a lot more eco-friendly or carbon neutral, or even negative level 1 solutions, layer 1 solutions are now becoming possible because of this strong push on a norm of eco-friendliness.
Crypto carbon certificates, that's pretty cool. Jaewon, or do you want to add, or I'll continue to the next person?
Yeah, hi, thank you. I'm Dhruv, I'm from Bangalore. My query basically is a very good presentation, but looking at ICT tech industry as a whole, where can we have the most impact? Like we took up some examples like stop watching movies or not having Zoom calls is not the most productive answer, but what is the answer? What are the first top things as an industry we can look at in changing? Any thoughts on that?
That's a good question. Jaewon wants to answer.
Since the speaker from Microsoft is not there, I want to talk about Microsoft because I saw an initiative that like they put the data center inside the ocean so that they cool down the data center, because most of the data center, they use the electricity to cool down the data center. And when they put it down, then, you know, so something like this innovative thing that companies can think of that save the energy without we don't watch Netflix or something.
Yeah, so I think this is a very interesting conversation, and I think that would be good also to focus on from end user point of view, from like as a CDN operator, as a network operator, as an edge. What are the things that we can do at all different levels? My one more extra question would be, what do we do with the e-waste that we generate in the networking, like all the gears that we are making? Not so much energy, but if you're talking about sustainability, I think it's important to take care of the hardware and the gears that we, I work for Huawei vendor company. We want to sell you more boxes. We'll come and ask you to replace, but it's important that we kind of start thinking about that as well. Any thoughts from the panel would be very nice. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely toxic materials. Also, we're talking about, e-waste as in the devices and so on. I wonder, Taiwan obviously is a big producer of chips and all that. I don't know, Audrey, if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I think there is reported that we sent less than recycled, not just electronic, but glass. We recycle it a lot in Taiwan, and we do a lot of upcycling as well. That is to say, instead of going straight back to the same things, we upcycle it. So it's actually this shirt from the presidential hackathon is from upcycled plastic, so that when every time that it's re-enter the production and services chain, it's made something that has a lot more surplus value thanks to design and things like that, so as to build incentives for the designers and small and medium enterprises to embrace this sort of continuous use of zero waste in our continuous upcycling. So yeah, I think this is as I mentioned, a consumer choice. A lot more people in Taiwan, when they're looking at buying a new laptop or things like that, they do pay attention to the labels, to the certificates that these producers put on the box, saying that how much of its shield, its plastic material, and so on are from upcycled or recycled choices. At the moment, I believe in Taiwan, what we're doing is still at the awareness building stage. We're not yet mandating zero waste for the ICT components and personal equipment and so on. But I think with time, when the norm becomes strong enough, we may look at some market regulations that increase the cost of the producers that do not engage in such upcycling or recycling or reusing activities.
Thank you, Audrey. It's always great to see a long line, but it's always the time when we're running out of time that happens. But I'll go to the on-site, and then we have an online comment, and I'll come back to the line. Please.
Thanks, Edmon. I'll be as brief as I can. But yeah, this is the comment I was going to make after Jaewon's presentation before, and thank you for that. But it's a bit tangential to that, so I didn't want to distract from what you'd actually been saying. But in terms of what positive impacts the internet can have for sustainability, I think a slightly meta but really important point is that with internet governance, we're experimenting and working towards new modes of governance for something, a resource that is truly global. That's the same thing that the environmental and sustainability governance community is working towards. I think we really need to be mindful of that and work to learn from each other and make sure that we're not missing out on lessons from those two experiences. These are two efforts at governing at a global scale that don't really fit with the traditional modes of governance that we have. And there's an opportunity that we really shouldn't lose there to make sure that we're reflecting each other, learning from each other, building the best global governance approaches and models that are possible. So,
do I hear a call for a multi-stakeholder approach to climate change?
Always, always. You know, absolutely. I think one thing to recognize is these global governance and global resources governance needs to be multi-stakeholder. That's true of the environment. It's true of the internet. So yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Go to the online question.
This question actually follows on from Chris's question. This is from online participant Lena Green. There has actually been much data collected and even models done via ITU Green ICT work and even GSMA. Has this work connected to other work, other findings? I have myself been involved in Green ICT from 2008, and I know there has been much done since then. How can we create a better coalition of creating advocacy and movement?
That question will take another hour. No, but seriously, I think it's definitely a very good question. How do we take this movement forward? But looking at the time, I'll take the three on-site comments and questions, and then I'll go to the final note. Just keep it very short. I'll go in the reverse order with Ellen, and then Jaewon, and then Audrey. But first, chat.
Yeah, thanks. Just to add on to the point about the e-waste, I think, and also the production, it is, I think, so part of what really struck me with this, what you've done here is the narrative. And I think part of that narrative ought to really look at the whole ecosystem, which includes the production, the use, and the extraction, as well as the how you recycle or the waste. Because I don't think we can separate that. And yet again, the second point I want to make is what Chris said about governance. And I do think that in looking at governance here, and if we're looking at multi-stakeholderism, we need to look at, it's not a new thing. Digital commons is not a new thing. It's one of the narratives or the principle of the internet. If we look at the resource as a commons, and perhaps it can also help us think of a governance principle around the internet, because it has become such an important resource for us. So just to add that to the conversation, thanks.
Thank you, very, very useful addition.
So this is Shraddha from the Youth SIG for the record. And can you hear me now? Okay. So I was looking through the EcoInternet Index report, and one of the key things towards the conclusion that it highlighted was the need to drive towards evaluation for appropriate interventions at the local and the community levels. But it also spoke predominantly about energy efficiency, infrastructure, and power grids. And all these three, the youth community feels a sense of detachment because they're not within our control or within something that they can actually tangibly change in their lives. So we wanted to ask if there is a further initiative to study or work towards the directions on what the youth community can work towards, or small changes that they can initiate. So one example, brilliant example that Jaewon gave was unsubscribing from mailing lists that you do not subscribe to because all that data is stored. So something along those lines, if there's a template or a best practices sort of evaluation that you can further add on to the report. So if there is any initiative for that, or if you're planning to do that.
No, thank you. I hope Jaewon and Audrey can add to this, but you probably underestimate the power of youth. You can make a difference, but don't unsubscribe from APrIGF. Okay?
Hi, I'm Amina. This is just a comment, just adding on to what Duncan talking about crypto. There's a decentralized autonomous organization called KlimaDAO, KLIMADAO. They are doing a whole green economy where when you buy a token, they will go directly to farmers, which will plant trees. So there, I think that is one of, I guess, solutions that we can think of, or like also what Chris has mentioned, local participation in making sure that the internet stays green. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce.
Hi, this is Joyce from APrIGF, and I know, sorry, and the last three speakers, but I just had to butt in. So Dhruv asked, what exactly it is we could do now, at the moment. And I feel like if we kept the discussions at like such a high level, it's very hard to go down into specifics. So I wanted to share APrIGF's experience. And so at APrIGF, we have this program called EcoInternet, which I sort of volunteer to run. And basically, we do a number of things. So we raise awareness, in our organization about environmental issues. It may or may not be related to the internet, but it's all about raising environmental consciousness. And then we also do a number of things like looking into carbon credits for our cloud servers, data servers. Also, travel is a big thing for APrIGF, especially for the APrIGF conferences. And so we also looking into like travel carbon credits. So actually, even at the corporate level, there are a lot of things that can be done, although not the most ideal solution, but at least we have some alternatives to look out for. So I wanted to share these things. Like, we don't have to start big. We can just start small. And if you start at your family level, you start at your corporate level, organization level, I think we could get somewhere, and then it just grows bigger. Thanks.
As Audrey mentioned, a little bit adds up. And it's the carbon consciousness thing. So Ellen, Jaewon, and Audrey, to very quick couple of sentences to wrap up. Ellen?
Hi, thanks. I think really would just be to hope that we can continue the conversation through, the work of APrIGF, but the global IGF, and I think there's some work going on there that, I think that there's a lot to unpick here, and high stakes for everyone and the internet. Thanks.
Thank you, Jaewon.
Yeah, as Joyce mentioned, I think the environmental initiative done in the organization shouldn't be stopped as just as a marketing to look like environmental friendly, but also do something like what Joyce said. In my institute, we restrict flight travel if we can use another transportation like a train and so on. And I think those measures should be more like applied to other organizations. And just as what he has talked about multi-stakeholder, I think when I first went to Europe, it was just because sustainability research are more focused there. But what I also realized is that technology advancement is much higher in Asia. So if we can collaborate between Europe's sustainability and Asia's technology, I'm sure that there are more future improvement that can be happen. So I think since the project is also funded by the German organization, I think just like this project, there should be more projects like this coming up. Thank you.
Thank you, Audrey.
Yeah, as I mentioned, many small and medium enterprises in Taiwan often think that carbon footprint verification, the total accounting and so on is very time consuming, expensive and so on. But that's precisely where the software and services delivered across the internet can help them. Back in May, when we ran the Asia Pacific Social Innovation Summit, the APSIS, we tried doing the whole carbon accounting for the footprint for the entire event, including the online part and the travel part and everything. And it wasn't hard because of the technology providers. So I think my last remark is that it's not difficult, whether it's through a decentralized autonomous organization or whether it's from a local user group, a community and so on. It's not difficult to find someone who can help you to assess the carbon footprint of any activity, including this panel we're having.
Thank you, Audrey, and thank you so much for everyone for joining. As I mentioned in the beginning, the intent of the project that DotAsia is working on is to start the conversation. I think it looks like the conversation has started, and for those of you who know me, I've been talking about one topic like internationalized domain names for the last 23 years. This is one of those topics, I think, that it will be a journey. It's not, we're not going to solve this issue next year. This is another one of those journeys that we will need to get everyone on board to continue to walk forward. So this is the start of the journey. Hopefully this is a start of the series that will come back to APrIGF and IGF and other NRIs to talk a little bit more about every time. So thank you everyone for joining.
Recording stopped.